What's up, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Commissioner's Office podcast. My name is Daniel, and thank you all for tuning in to the bonus episode here. I just recorded another episode on the NFL trade deadline yesterday, and tonight I'm putting out an episode on evaluating the Chicago Bears halfway through the NFL season. So if you haven't already, make sure to tune in to the NFL trade deadline video, especially if you're not exactly a Bears fan and you just want to hear about what your favorite team did at the deadline. I got you covered at that episode. For this episode, you can think of it kind of as a state of the team evaluation per se. You know how like the president does the State of the Union every year. I'm going to try to define the state of the Bears right now as we head into Week 9. If we were trying to evaluate the state of the team right now, I would say that in a couple words, it's not great. Where have I heard this before with the Bears not having a successful season? But yeah, we're sitting at 2-6 right now. We're ranked 17th in offense and we're 28th in defense. The fans are justifiably not happy right now with the direction of the team. And something that I don't think anyone was really expecting, but this has probably been the most chaotic Bears season in recent memory. On top of just another bad start to the year, we've had two coaches that have either resigned or been fired, and we're only in Week 9. So, not a very good start. But I think there's a lot to discuss, so buckle up. And I think the first thing we'll start with is the team performance. So, how is the team performing? Well, we'll start with the quarterback position. Justin Fields, he was supposed to take a very big step this year, and he hasn't quite done that. He's right now sitting at just over 1,200 yards with 11 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. And, of course, he's missed the last 2 games with injury and is likely out this coming Sunday, tomorrow, when I'm recording this, versus New Orleans. So, it's not a great look, but again, there's always nuance to these kinds of things. The biggest issue I've seen with Justin Fields so far is that he's just taking too long to throw and not really playing to his instincts. I still think that his decision-making and his accuracy are not really problems. I think they're pretty good. I would say that the issue with him is that he's just being put in this box by Luke Getsy, our offensive coordinator. And frankly, the offensive staff has shown little motivation to actually cater to his strengths. Now, of course, the fact that the offensive line has been basically trotted out a new starting 5 every single week and has just overall not been great is also not helping Fields' performance. But again, I think that, Justin Fields said it himself that coaching was the issue and that he's trying to play less, like robotically, if that's even a word. However, in the last couple weeks that he did play, he has looked a lot better, and I'm really excited to see how he does when he gets back. We saw in practice a couple days ago that he was starting to throw the ball as he's working back from that kind of like broken thumb or dislocated thumb on his right hand. So he's officially listed as doubtful, I believe, tomorrow versus New Orleans. So we're hoping next Thursday versus the Panthers is when he'll get to come back. When we talk about the run game with the Bears, it's been pretty underwhelming. And I get that we're number 5 in rushing yards, but in my opinion, it's still been kind of inconsistent. Now, again, injuries to Khalil Herbert and Roschon Johnson, our rookie running back, are not helping. But overall, just the consistency play-to-play with the run game just hasn't been there. And granted, the Bears the last couple seasons, last 5 seasons, I want to say, have actually been pretty decent at just filling in consistent runners. Like we have Herbert, we have Roschon Johnson, we've had David Montgomery, and now we have Deontay Foreman. Now we have Darrynton Evans, who have had their moments this season. Of course, Deontay Foreman had 3 touchdowns against the Raiders. I think that we're getting better in the run game, which is good. But I think the biggest thing that the Bears can do is establish the run game early, because frankly, when we don't establish the run early, we can't really use the pass to counter the defense's expectation that we're running, if that makes sense. The Bears' identity, one thing that the offense seems to agree on is that we are a run-based offense. We're not, an air raid style offense like the Chiefs, for example. So the fact that we can't seem to get our offensive identity going in like the first quarter or so already kind of puts us in a hole to start most games. And that's what happened in the Chargers game with Tyson Bagent. And, even though we're working with a rookie quarterback, he threw the ball pretty well against Las Vegas. So we're hoping that we would be able to run the ball well against, I almost just said San Diego, but unfortunately they're in Los Angeles. So, we couldn't do that against the Chargers. The run game really never got going. It forced the Bears to kind of pass more than they were comfortable with. And obviously that did not work out super well for us. Speaking of passing the ball, that takes us to the receiving core, the third element of the offense. I really like what I've seen out of DJ Moore this season. We made the big trade, obviously, to go get him. I think he can be our number one wide receiver going forward. I would say I would like to see more targets to Darnell Mooney, as he's only averaging 3.5 targets a game, and he's way too good for that. I think that, again, this is not necessarily the fault of someone like Justin Fields, because he's working with that bad offensive line. He's working with coaches that don't seem to care about what he's good at. I think that, when you see a guy like Tyson Bagent come in, it's not really his fault either, because he's the backup quarterback and we had to cut him some slack. But I think going forward, we need to find a way, if defenses are going to put a lot of their attention towards DJ Moore and neutralizing him, then just by definition, Darnell Mooney is going to have to be open at some point. But with that being said, I think Cole Kmet has been a good safety valve as well this year. I think we really should be trying to spread the ball around a little bit more. Now, in order to understand the Bears' defense, I need to air one of my grievances against the Bears fans. We knew going into the season that the Bears' defense was going to be trash. I'm sorry. We knew this was going to happen, and frankly, we completely ignored it. And now, halfway through the season, Bears fans are yet again complaining about how bad the defense is. And I understand that we spent a significant amount of money investing in our linebacking core, signing TJ Edwards and Tremaine Edmonds. I get that. But when we do not do anything to improve the pass rush, it's not going to end well. I understand we signed Yannick Ngakoue at the very end of the offseason. Yes, okay, fine. We made one move to acquire a pass rusher. And, okay, if you watch the draft, we did draft two interior defensive linemen, Gervin Dexter and Zach Pickens, in the second and third round, I believe. However, neither of those guys are starting, because we have Andrew Billings and we have Justin Jones and we have DeMarcus Walker on the defensive line as well. So we didn't do anything to complete the pass we didn't do anything to improve the pass rush at all. We let Robert Quinn go. We let Khalil Mack go a while ago. Trevis Gibson has not panned out the way we wanted to. And we brought in Yannick Ngakoue and just kind of said, okay, whatever, we'll be fine. It is not going to be good, or was not going to be good going into the season, and surprise, surprise, it has not. Now, let's hope the trade for Montez Sweat helps. Of course, I scripted this episode before he signed his big deal this morning. So, if you didn't know, Montez Sweat signed a 4-year, $98 million contract this morning with the Bears. He's making about $24.5 million per year. Now, before you all say, whoa, that is a ton of money for a guy who has never had double-digit sacks in the season. First of all, yes, I understand that. Second of all, he is nowhere close to the top, making the top end kind of money per year for a pass rusher. For reference, the highest paid pass rusher in the league is Nick Bosa, who just signed his contract. I think he's making around $34 million a year. And frankly, it seemed like the target average number in the millions per year was going to be around 27 to 28. So the fact that we got Montez Sweat for $24.5 million per year, I think is a win. And I know, we're talking a ton of money here. like $24 million compared to $28 million. It sounds like it's hard to comprehend the kind of money that we're dealing with here. But overall, I think it's a solid deal. He's going to be around the top. I think he's going to be like 6 or 7 in terms of the highest paid edge rushers in the league. So still behind guys like TJ Watt and Myles Garrett and Nick Bosa. So, I think this is reasonable. We knew we were going to have to pay this guy money, and the fact that he is now under contract for a couple years, I think brings some solace to the Bears fans who were very worried about the prospect of Montez Sweat leaving in free agency after we spend a very high second-round pick trading for him. That was me. I was very scared that we were just going to let Montez Sweat walk, but we didn't. If you don't remember, I said on the other episode on the trade deadline that there was no way that Ryan Poles didn't make this trade unless he was 99 or even 100% sure that Montez Sweat was going to re-sign with a long-term deal with the Bears, and in the end, he must have been pretty sure because he got the deal done. So, with all of this about the pass rush being said, they're not very good. Maybe Montez Sweat will get things going a little bit. The defense still for the Bears, I think, has been kind of perplexing, to say the least. Yes, they are 28th in yards, and 43% of drives against our D has resulted in a score, which is the 4th worst in the league. But the Bears' defense is actually surprisingly disciplined, which is strange considering our young secondary. We've acquired the 3rd least amount of penalties committed against us, so only 2 teams have had less defensive penalties than we have. 2. That's pretty good. I think that's something they should be proud of. We're also 1st in the NFL in rushing yards allowed before contact. So, for example, we have allowed only 71 yards before contact. So, like, let's say the running back gets a ball on a toss, like the Bears are, right to the ball. So, in order to put this 71-yard number in context, so the Bears are the best in the league at getting to the ball, allowing the fewest rushing yards for contact. The league average is 257. So this, essentially what I'm taking away from that stat is that we get to the ball very quickly, and that's one of our strengths on D. So again, we should be proud of that too. So, overall, it's not good. The main problem has been consistency, I would say. The fact that we have all of this talent on our team, and of course we have our holes, but we have a lot of talent and we can't seem to string together game in and game out a solid, core of players is very frustrating, and I get that. So the question then devolves into who is to blame for the Bears' lack of success. Now, this is going to sound like a cop-out answer, and I feel like I've had to answer this question countless times over the evolution of this podcast, just given how bad the Bears have been the last 4 years, especially from a fan's perspective. This is going to sound like a bad answer, but honestly, I think that there is more than enough blame to go around. I think this is partly on Ryan Poles because he frankly didn't do anything to add a pass rusher in the offseason. He hasn't done anything until literally today. This is also partly because Justin Fields has not been as sharp as we thought. Look, I defend Justin Fields more than I would say 90% of Bears fans. I really think that he is a fantastic player and that we're just not using him correctly. But, of course, part of that could potentially be on him. Part of that could be that, maybe it's not all coaching and he's just not, at the end of the day, it's not Luke Getsy getting under center and taking the snap. He can only do so much to coach up Justin Fields. So obviously part of the blame goes on him and decision making and, figuring out how he can get better at the game. So part of that is on Fields. I think it's also partly on Luke Getsy because he frankly just doesn't show much interest in catering the offense to Fields. I was so frustrated by all of the Bears fans on Twitter just all the way up until he got the start, just saying, oh, Bagent is easily better than Fields. This is not even a question. This dude had like 3 good drives in the preseason, and everyone was like, oh, he's better than Fields. Not everyone, but like a considerable amount of people. And so then he finally gets a chance to prove himself against a really bad Raiders team that has like done nothing on defense. They're basically just being carried by Max Crosby. And Bagent looks perfectly comfortable in the offense. He's running the ball well, he's throwing the ball well. He barely is doing anything. He's not doing anything mind-blowing, but he's taking care of business, and he guides the Bears to a rather easy win versus the Raiders. And then everyone was like, oh, wow, Bagent is so much better than Fields. And this made me so mad because, dude, I'm sticking up for my starting quarterback at this point. I am not a Tyson Bagent hater. I think he's a good player. I think that he is an absolute gem of a find coming from a D2 school in Shepherd. But what really frustrated me is the fact that Tyson Bagent seemed super comfortable and the Bears knew exactly what to do with his skill set. And you can say, oh, it's against a bad defense, whatever. But the Bears had a game plan in that game versus the Raiders. They knew that Bagent was not going to throw for 500 yards, so they just gave the ball to D'Onta Foreman, and he did most of the work. Bagent made some good throws here and there. He didn't make any mistakes. And sure, he did his part too, but what was more frustrating was the fact that it seemed like the Bears put more effort into making sure that Tyson Bagent was comfortable than they have with Fields in his entire tenure with the team. That's what frustrated me. So this problem with the Bears offense not being good is not just because Justin Fields is holding the ball too long. It's because Luke Getsy doesn't frankly seem to care about catering to the fact that Fields is this generational runner. And we run like 3 designed runs a game, and yet we force him to stay in this horrible pocket that we've created for him and is being thrown at him day in and day out because of offensive line injuries, terrible interior scheming. Like, that is the thing that frustrates me the most about the Bears offense. It just seems like to me that Getsy is trying so hard to make Fields into a pocket passer, and he's not. He's a great passer when he is put in the right system, but just that is always what makes me mad. When Bagent, who is an actual pocket passer and not a scrambler like Fields, comes in and does his thing and then goes up against an actually good defense or a defense with a certain amount of talent on it in the Chargers and isn't able to do much, now we know that Tyson Bagent isn't this superstar quarterback that no one, knew about. It's offensive scheming. Our offensive scheme, which is created by Luke Getsy, is designed for a pocket passer. We have completely failed to have Fields basically play to his abilities. And Fields literally said it himself. He said the issue was coaching because he's being told to do a million things at once. And once he said that, and even the Bears who trotted him out there again to apologize for disrespecting his coach, that message was sent because after he dragged the coaching through the mud, he has started to play better. So, again, part of the issue is because of the offensive scheming and just seems like the unwillingness to change anything to actually cater to our quarterback's strengths. But again, this is also partly because Matt Eberflus as a head coach is not running as tight of a ship as we've expected. And this is where we kind of get into the really sad part of the season so far, where we talk about Alan Williams, the defensive coordinator's resignation, as well as David Walker, the running backs coach, and how he was fired a couple days ago. So, as a disclaimer, these situations are completely completely unrelated. The reason why Alan Williams resigned, which we still don't really know much about, and the reason why David Walker resigned, which all we know it was an issue that HR had to get involved with, completely unrelated. I need to get that out there. Completely unrelated. And the situations were handled very differently. I think that Matt Eberflus handled David Walker's firing pretty well. I was listening to Hogan John's podcasts on Apple a couple days ago, and they made some good points. They said that Eberflus handled the Walker firing well and better because he learned from the Williams situation, and he acknowledged up front that David Walker violated a team standard, and he was fired for it. And the other point that I found interesting was that they were asking Ryan Poles, or they were covering, the podcast was talking about a press conference with Ryan Poles, and the reporters were asking Poles if he thought that the Bears had a culture problem. And Poles answered it by saying that many teams have culture problems, but they sweep it under the rug. And the fact that the Bears actually acknowledged it and fired him and said he violated a standard actually may not be as much of a, bad thing as they realize, because in a way we're kind of taking accountability for the situation. Now, obviously, regardless of what Alan Williams and David Walker did and how they left the team, these are still Matt Eberflus's assistants. Like, they were hired deliberately by the Bears by Matt Eberflus. So, I'm really not sure whether the Bears actually have a culture problem, but that's separate from poor team performance. I don't personally think the locker room is in a good spot. I really find it hard to believe that a lot of the older players on the team are especially, chipper about the direction of the 2-6 Bears with a backup quarterback. I don't personally think the locker room environment is great. I think Matt Eberflus is kind of delusional when he says, "Oh, we're just getting started," and we still have a really good mentality. I would find that hard to believe, and if that is true, then he's cooking up some Kool-Aid for the Bears to drink, I swear. But I honestly can't tell you if they have a culture problem that's separate from the team performance, because it's also worth noting that the Bears are just not known for scandal. I'm really trying to think of a team that is comparable to this, but the first thing that comes to my mind is the Patriots with Robert Kraft's situation, and then obviously the whole Aaron Hernandez thing and all the cheating scandals. The Bears aren't known for this. They don't have this kind of issue. We don't really have a ton of players compared to the rest of the NFL that get arrested or coaches that resign because they did something wrong. That's why this has been such a chaotic season. Say what you want about the McCaskies, but there's not really a ton of evidence that they are any more of bad people than the average NFL owner. They're not a Dan Snyder kind of, family. At least that's just my opinion. Obviously every owner does things incorrectly sometimes, but that's what I've taken away. So this has been really unexpected for a lot of Bears fans. And I didn't talk about the Alan Williams resignation because, when I made the last episode, well, partly because I don't think he resigned up at that point, but frankly, I just didn't think there was much to talk about. He resigned to deal with his health and to spend time with his family, which is kind of whatever, every resignation goes like that. But there was a lot of crazy rumors flying around on the internet that were just not true. The Bears were not raided by the FBI. That was fake. He hasn't been arrested. None of that stuff is true. I'm not saying it won't ever happen. I don't know what happened, but all of the crazy stuff that people were basically just pulling out of thin air and putting on Twitter and being "Oh, this is true," wasn't happening. So that's why I didn't really talk about it. David Walker, we don't know why he was fired. It just seemed like he was doing something weird and HR got involved and Matt Eberflus fired him. So, again, none of this stuff is helping the team. That's what I'm trying to say. You see how many things are going wrong this season that, not even talking about team performance, all of the off-the-field stuff has not been helping. So, obviously, we've talked about how the issues with the Bears have been a combination of chaos within the team and team turnover, poor offensive scheming, a continued problem, and, a kind of a hint of not quite finishing the team construction. After all, this is Poles' second offseason, essentially, at the helm. I think another issue that has gone on this season actually is completely devoid of the organization, because this is just my opinion that I think that the lack of success from the Bears this season is partly on the fans. And I'm trying to walk delicately here, but there's a certain amount of disappointment that Bears fans get that I think is self-inflicted, because we came into this season cautiously optimistic, as we do every season, I feel like, at least as we have for a lot of recent years. But this season, fans were, I think, a little bit overhyped. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but the fact that we lost patience so quickly just disappoints me. I don't know how else to say it. Like, I used to be a very pessimistic person. In some cases, I still am. And for those of you who've listened to this show for a long time, know, like, just how angry I've gotten sometimes. Like, but the fact that we came into this season with all this hype, which we don't do every year, but then basically like one quarter into the Packers game in week 1, everyone was out. Everyone was like, nope, we're done. And we're kind of in the same place now where the fans just seem to just not really care. Like, I don't really know how else to put it. Just, we put all this hype into the team and we lost it so quickly. Like, it's one of those magic tricks where, like, the Pope, like, pulls a tablecloth off of a off of a table with a bunch of, like, fancy china on it. Like, that's how quick we lost our hope in the team. Now, I wrote about this in a long text to some of my friends a couple days ago about what I called my worst Bears take ever. And yes, I'm quoting myself, but this was the only place I found that I actually wrote this down that I think describes it well. And I'm going to try to summarize it here. I think there's a lot of people you hear on Twitter and on social media that talk about how they've been a Bears fan since, insert date before 2000 here. I've been a Bears fan since 1990 or 1980, whatever. I personally just find this argument not a valid one and just unproductive, and I think it needs to stop. I wrote down Bears fans who are in supposed agony over literally everything the organization does, from the on-the-field product to the prices of the hot dogs to whoever we sign in free agency to whatever the stadium stuff is. They just need to just take a break. Like, I will not consider a Bears fan a bandwagon if they just stopped watching, like, if the Bears, like, let's say hypothetically the Bears just aren't very good for the next 4 years. So in 2028, they suddenly get good and they make the playoffs. If you stopped watching in that 4-year period where they're bad, and then when they become good again, you continue to be a fan, you resume being a fan, you're not a bandwagon. Like, I don't personally consider you a bandwagon if that's your home team. That's just how human interest works. There's nothing wrong with taking a break about being a fan. All of the fans who talk about how much of a torture act it is to watch the team, nobody is forcing you to watch them, okay? If it really is that bothersome to you, I just don't think you should be airing your grievances like this. Just stop watching. It's that simple. Just stop watching. Like, I'm just kind of sick of Bears fans pointing to some random loss to a team that's better than them and saying, oh, this is why we're the laughing stock of the league. And it's like, yeah, maybe we're not a good team, but the whole laughing stock label is applied partly by the fans. Like, not just because of on-field performance. The whole, like, doomer mentality thing, at a certain point, it's just ridiculous to me. If it's that bad, just stop watching. If it's that much of a such a chore to watch this horrible team play. I get it. We're not good. We haven't been good the last 3 years. But I mean, maybe I'm just special in some way, but I'm always excited to watch the Bears play. Even when we were 3-12 and in the bottom of the barrel and our starting quarterback was Matt Barkley and it was week 17, I was still sitting down on my living room couch excited to just watch the Bears play because I love the team. So you can call me crazy, you can call me a sheep to the, McCaskies or whatever, but that is my most unpopular take, is that just the people who are constantly complaining about how they're somehow forced to watch this team and how much of a disappointment we are. I get the disappointment, but if it's that bad, stop watching. Come back when you're ready, and you won't be considered a bandwagon in my book. You won't. So, how can we right the ship? That is a question that I've been thinking about a lot lately. I think trading for Montez Sweat is a good start. I wrote down in my script that we got to re-sign him, and we did. So, good job. Step 1, complete. Re-signed Montez Sweat. I think Jalen Johnson is worth re-signing while you're at it. Yes, he has not been playing at as high of a level as he is currently for very long, but cornerback is a premium position. When you got a good corner, you take him, all right? Why do you think we kept Kyle Fuller for so long, even though he really only had 1 year of peak production? Because he was better than most of the guys we were going to get on the market. We also just re-signed Andrew Billings, who's been a good defensive tackle for us, so I think that was also a good move as well. I think that we also should keep Tyson Bagent. Probably a very obvious statement, but as a backup, I would say. He's not Brock Purdy. Everyone thought after the Raiders game, oh, this guy is the next Brock Purdy, coming out of nowhere, kind of just doing his thing. I don't think he is going to be this starting quarterback long term, but he is a heck of a backup, and for sure we should keep him on the team. I think when Justin Fields returns, we need to also operate under the assumption that he is the guy for now. Let him make his case for why he should stay. A lot of Bears fans are jumping ship already, saying we want Caleb Williams, whatever. But honestly, I just don't really see a point in that right now, because if he's bad, he's bad, and we end up with a better draft pick, and sure, then we can move on. But if he's good, then that gives us some hope that, maybe with a new offensive coordinator, new head coach, whatever, we can kind of, we can fix him. But I think just philosophically, we need to operate under the assumption this season that he is the guy, and we need to just hope that he plays well. As a more long-term solution, I would say that the people calling for the Bears to sell the team, honestly, you're wasting your time. Look, I understand that Virginia McCaskey is getting up there in age, but it's not happening anytime soon. If you don't believe me that they're not going to sell the team, they're building a new stadium, man. They would not have hired Kevin Warren if they did not have the intention of keeping the team and building a stadium. If they were going to sell the team, they would have just hired some puppet, basically, for the McCaskies until the moment was right for them to get out of there. They would not be trying to literally look in every single suburb of Chicago for a new stadium. They would just not be putting in that effort. I think that there's 3 different ways that this offseason, which is not for a while, but I think there's 3 different ways the offseason could go down. Option 1 is that Ryan Poles stays around, he gets to choose a new head coach, and Matt Eberflus is fired. Essentially, the rationale being just there's too much chaos within the organization to keep Flus, and his hiring was essentially predetermined. There was the short list of head coaches when Ryan Poles was hired, and so I guess Poles and McCaskey kind of just agreed on Eberflus. But with Eberflus being fired, Poles gets a little bit more of a say and gets to create the short list himself. Option 2 is that Kevin Warren, our CEO, the new Ted Phillips essentially, assuming that he has the final say over coaching and front office positions, as the McCaskies have alluded to, Kevin Warren sees the chaos and he just cleans house. He fires Poles and he fires Eberflus. Everyone on the coaching staff is fired. It is a total reboot. Honestly, I would be very surprised if that happened. The Bears usually give head coaches 3 years. They also usually give GMs more than one head coach. Obviously, Mark Trestman, I believe, was only here for like 2 years. So, it's happened. Bears aren't firing Eberflus midseason unless something catastrophic happens. It's just, I don't see that happening. So, I would be very surprised if this happened, but stranger things have happened. So if Kevin Warren decides to clean house, that would be very interesting. Option 3 is that Eberflus and Ryan Poles stay. It's hard for me to believe that Flus stays, but he seems pretty confident in him. At least he's been saying in press conferences that he supports him a lot. So I'm kind of split on that one. I really don't think that the chances of Eberflus being fired are as high as people think they are. But overall, I think just looking at Matt's record so far as our head coach, it's hard for me to believe that Ryan Poles would look at that and look at all the scandal and just be like, yeah, no, we should keep him. But I don't know. Again, stranger things have happened. Regardless of what one of those options does end up taking place, there's really just one thing that I want over all of that. I think everyone in the organization just needs to be 100% set at what we're doing at quarterback. This sounds weird and it's probably unreasonable, but in my ideal situation with the Bears, well, I would be the GM. That's in my ideal situation. But ideally, I want everyone from Kevin Warren, Ryan Poles, and whoever the head coach is, whether it's Eberflus or not, to wholeheartedly agree that either Fields is the QB or someone else, Caleb Williams, Tyson Bagent, I don't even know at this point, is the QB. We can't have it where half the organization is with Fields, but Luke Getsy doesn't really want him, but Kevin Warren might want to draft someone. No, we can't have that. I think that if Ryan Poles or Matt Eberflus ends up being fired, let's say Matt Eberflus ends up being fired and Ryan Poles stays, because I think that's the likeliest outcome right now. I want the first question that Ryan Poles asks whoever he hires as head coach to be, what should we do at quarterback? That should be the first question. Assuming Fields is still on the roster, which he will be probably, and Poles will probably have an answer in his head on what he thinks the team should do. They need to agree. The bottom line. No exceptions. That's the one thing that I want the Bears to hold firm on. They need to have a comprehensive plan on what to do with the quarterback position. Because this, in my opinion, has been the issue. Justin Fields was drafted by Matt Nagy and Ryan Pace. They were fired a year later. Ryan Poles knew he was getting Justin Fields, but did he really want him? We'll never know. The same happened with Mitch Trubisky. He was drafted by John Fox, and or he was drafted by Ryan Pace. John Fox didn't really even want him, and they brought in Matt Nagy. Did he really want Trubisky? I don't know. So that's just the big thing that I wish for going forward, is that everyone in the building, in House Hall, agrees on what to do at QB. Might not be reasonable, but that's what I want. Well, that is going to bring an end to this episode of the Commissioner's Office podcast. If you've made it this far, I want to thank everyone for tuning in. I know it's kind of a longer episode than the last one, but the Bears always bring a lot of conversation to the table, and so for that, I obviously am very thankful to them. Hopefully, we can go and beat the Saints tomorrow. But In the meantime, if you like hearing me talk sports, make sure to take a look at my podcast page on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. You know what to do. And if you know me personally and just want to suggest an episode idea, hit me up. You know where to find me. I'm always looking for new content. And I want to hear what you guys want me to talk about. If you guys want me to talk about the Olympics or something, then I don't know. I'll give it a try as long as you guys want me to take a look at it. So always looking for new suggestions. But in the meantime, I hope everyone has a good rest of your weekend. Thank you for listening, and I will see you all next time.